There is something quietly running your life. Not loudly, not dramatically. You won't see it announce itself. But it is always there. Working. It shows up in what you do without thinking, in what you feel without choosing, in what keeps coming back again and again and again. That thing is repetition, not the kind you notice easily, not the obvious routines you plan for, but the subtle kind, the thoughts you return to, the reactions you repeat, the behaviors you don't question anymore. Those. Most people underestimate repetition because it feels small. One action, nothing. One thought, harmless. One decision, forgettable. But repetition is not about the one, it is about the again. Again is where the power is. Again is where things start to stick. Again is where things stop feeling new. Again is where effort begins to fade, and eventually, again becomes automatic. Think about that word for a moment. Automatic. It means you are no longer fully involved, no longer choosing in real time, no longer deciding from scratch. You are running something. And here is where it gets serious. Whatever you repeat long enough runs you back. It starts simple. You think something once, you react a certain way once, you choose something once. No big deal. But then it happens again. Same thought, same reaction, same choice. At first, you notice it. You are aware. There is a gap between you and what you are doing. But keep repeating it. That gap begins to close. You no longer pause. You no longer question. You no longer even realize. It just happens. This is how something becomes part of you. Not because you decided it should be, but because you repeated it until it felt normal. And normal is powerful, because once something feels normal, you stop resisting it. You stop asking, is this right? You stop asking, is this helping me? You stop asking, do I want this? You just continue. This is how patterns are formed, quietly, gradually, without permission. And here is the part that most people miss. Repetition does not ask if something is good or bad. It only asks one question. Is this happening again? If the answer is yes, it starts strengthening it. So it doesn't matter if it's confidence or self-doubt, discipline or procrastination, focus or distraction. If you repeat it, it grows. And growth, in this sense, is not visible at first. It is internal, subtle, like a path being formed under your feet. The first time you walk through grass, nothing changes. The second time, maybe a slight bend. The 10th time, a faint line. The 100th time, a path, clear, easy, inviting. Now here is the important part. Once that path exists, you will feel pulled to walk it again, not because you chose it, but because it is easier. And the mind loves easy. It is designed for efficiency, to conserve energy, to avoid unnecessary effort. So it starts preferring what is familiar, what is already built, what requires less thinking. And just like that, what you repeated becomes what you default to. This is why change feels so difficult. Not because you don't want it, but because what you have repeated is already built. You are not starting from zero. You are starting from a system that has been reinforced, a system that says, this is how we do things. And when you try to do something different, that system resists. It feels uncomfortable, wrong, forced, even unnatural. You hesitate, you overthink, you go back, not because you failed, but because repetition is defending itself. And here is something you need to understand clearly. Repetition protects what it has created. If you have repeated something for long enough, it will try to keep you there. So when you feel that resistance, that pull back to old patterns, do not misread it. It is not a sign that you can't change. It is a sign that something has been repeated enough to become strong. Now let's shift slightly and point that repetition does not stop at what you do. It extends to how you see. Because what you repeat internally begins to shape your perception. If you keep thinking a certain way, you start noticing things that match it. Not consciously, automatically. If you repeatedly expect things to go wrong, you become alert to problems. You notice them faster. You focus on them longer. If you repeatedly believe things can work out, you become open to possibilities. You notice chances. You take small risks. Same world, different focus, and focus changes experience. So now, it's not just that you are repeating thoughts. Those thoughts are shaping what you see, and what you see shapes what you do. And what you do creates what happens, and what happens reinforces what you think. It loops, quietly, consistently, powerfully, and over time, it starts to feel like life is just happening to you. But if you look closely, you will see patterns, not identical situations, but familiar ones, similar outcomes, similar reactions, similar endings, different details, same direction. That is repetition extending beyond you, not in a mystical way, not in a complicated way, in a very practical one. You keep responding the same way. So you keep creating similar results. You keep expecting the same thing. So you keep preparing for it. You keep believing the same idea. So you keep confirming it, and slowly, your life starts reflecting what you have been repeating. Not perfectly, but consistently enough to notice. This is why some people feel stuck. Not because nothing is changing, but because they are not changing what they repeat. New year, same patterns, new opportunity, same response, new situation, same outcome, and it becomes frustrating or even confusing. Why does this keep happening? But that question misses something. A better question is, what am I repeating that keeps leading here? That question gives you power, because now you are not looking outside first. You are looking at the pattern, and once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Not perfectly, not instantly, but deliberately. You catch the thought. Pause. You feel the reaction. Pause. You notice the urge to act the same way. And you choose differently, even if it's small, even if it feels awkward. That moment, that small interruption, is where change begins, not in big decisions, not in motivation, in interruption, followed by repetition, because doing it once is not enough. You have to do it again and again and again until the new response starts to feel familiar, until the new path starts to form, until the effort begins to reduce. That is when repetition starts working for you. But there is something important to accept here. For a while, both paths will exist. The old one, easy, fast, automatic. The new one, slow, uncertain, deliberate. And every day you will feel the difference. You will feel the pull of the old. You will feel the effort of the new. That is the process, not a sign you are failing, but a sign you are building. Because repetition does not erase instantly, it replaces gradually. The old path fades as the new one strengthens. Not overnight, over time, and time in this case is not measured in days, but in repetitions. How many times did you choose differently? How many times did you interrupt the old? How many times did you reinforce the new? That is the real count. Because each time matters, even when it feels small, even when it feels unnoticed, especially then. Because repetition does its best work quietly. No applause, no dramatic shift, no instant result, just accumulation, and then one day, you respond differently, without forcing it. You think differently, without trying. You act differently, without effort. And it surprises you. That is when you realize something has changed, not because of one moment, but because of many. Repeated. So now, bring it back to yourself. Not your plans, not your goals, your patterns. What do you repeat when things go wrong? What do you repeat when things go right? What do you repeat when no one is watching? Those answers matter more than intentions, more than promises, because repetition is honest. It shows what is actually happening, and whatever is actually happening is what is shaping your life. So if you want change, do not start with everything. Start with one thing, one thought to challenge, one reaction to pause, one action to repeat differently. Small, clear, consistent. Then stay with it, even when it feels slow, even when it feels pointless, even when nothing seems to change, because something is changing. You just can't see it yet. Repetition is working underneath, building, strengthening, shifting, until eventually it shows in how you think, in how you act, in what you experience. And when it does, it will feel natural, not because it always was, but because you repeated it until it became so. That is how repetition works. Quietly at first, then completely. So be careful with it. Be intentional with it. Be patient with it. Because whether you use it or ignore it, it is still shaping you. Again, and again, and again. Thank you for watching. If the video has made you see things differently, don't keep it to yourself. Write your thoughts in the comments and share the video with someone who needs this. And if you're serious about changing what you repeat, subscribe.